Primal Chaos.
Hey guys, Primal Chaos here, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be looking at a band from Australia, one that I'm really not familiar with, as they're more of an underground sort of sensation. But you know, it came to my attention recently through my Discord channel. If you haven't signed up, just link in my description. There's a great group of people over there talking about music all the time. It's occurred to me through conversations with people from overseas that my knowledge of local talent is severely lacking. And it's indicative of kind of how Australia believes they have a music industry, but we really have this cobbled together thing that it works for a very select few people or artists, and for everyone else it's just everybody having a crack at it and really just screaming into the ether, to be honest. You know, and bands like this, Symbiosist, are the kind of groups that, you know, unless you're in the scene and you're actively going out and hunting down original Aussie metal bands and things like that, you probably haven't heard of. That said, the funny thing that I've noticed from talking to people overseas is that a lot of times so many particularly indie artists and things like that are known in other countries like the UK and maybe America, but they're just not household names here in Australia. And I think that's largely because it seems in this day and age with technology and communication and global sort of reach the way that it is, it makes more sense to focus on marketing yourself if you're independently globally than it does to, you know, kick off like locally and just put in the hard yards around the traps here. You know, that said, you know, bands will take whatever gigs they can, but it's sort of, we're in a position now where it just makes more sense and you'll get more eyeballs potentially by focusing, you know, your attention outside of Australia. And a lot of that has to do with our population and things like that. There's only 20 something million of us. You know, some large cities in other countries have more people than we have here in Australia. So that's part of it. Also, we don't really have like a first party music scene, right? We don't, like, we get a lot of bands touring and stuff like that here, like big acts and stuff, but we really don't have music radio, not in any sort of real capacity. So everything's internet based now. And so it stands to reason that, you know, you can go a really long time as an Australian without really coming across any independent acts that really blow your hair back, because you actually have to actively go looking for them. And if you're not the kind of person who does that, then you'll never know about this sort of stuff. A lot of what this channel has been about is finding things that, you know, or filling in gaps in my music knowledge that I've always been ashamed of, but never really looked at correcting. You know, like things like not understanding acts like Rush, or like looking into the insane music scene over in Japan and things like that. And so, you know, I've been slowly closing off all these gaps, but sometimes you got to look, you know, what's going on at home. And these guys came my way via a friend of the band's, who's, you know, these guys have been around for many years. This video I'm going to be playing today, I know is roughly 13 years old. So like era wise, I don't know what that means, like whether or not, you know, that would put it roughly in 2011, something like that. I don't know. And the scene, they may have changed their sound by now. I don't know. I know that they're still actively working, might have just recently released an EP as well. But I just thought I'd go back and check out, you know, what these guys were doing back in the day, just to get a point of reference. And yeah, that's about all I really know. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on too much. The Symbiosist Invocate official video. As I said, this one's a little bit older. But if you like it, hit them up, find them on social media. They're definitely all on YouTube if you want to check out more of their material. Here we go, Symbiosist. Oh, ominous. Oh, that's detuned. Okay. Interesting. Wow, okay, interesting. So I'll stop it there. Like the first thing that sort of jumps out is, I mean, it's kind of par for the course with this genre, but I like how they've made a real statement with just the introduction, right? If you go back and check out the intro, there's a whole bunch of musical ideas right there that sort of jump around all over the place, and it gives you an indication of what to expect, I suppose, right? Right, this is kind of a lumbering sort of low chug, sort of detuned. It almost sounds like they've gone and detuned their guitars but didn't change to a heavier gauge string, so they got like rubber bands. You know what I mean? Anyone who's a guitar player who's ever detuned a lot knows that feeling of the strings, they sort of lose a lot of tension, and so you end up with this weird sort of thing where just by touching the strings, you're almost pulling them out of tune, and you get that kind of cool, warbly kind of intonation. It's very indicative of the time, but it sounds kind of cool, man. Like I feel a little bit of Korn in there and stuff, but what I'm really getting though, and as much as I don't have a lot of experience with this band, I'm hearing a fair bit of Meshuggah, because there's like really unusual sort of almost cobbled together rhythmic sort of change ups, but with repetitive loop almost kind of sounds that kind of, it lulls you in because you're hearing the same thing over and over and over and over. But you know, rhythmically it's complex. So it's sort of like, it's kind of always triggering your synapses to like grab your attention again. It's very interesting. Yeah, so this is kind of like that bouncy sort of chugginess. And then as soon as it switches up, it's a completely different song. Right? Now it's kind of gallopy a little bit. Oh, we got cleans. All right. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of interesting things going through there. That just when it sort of went into that sort of higher clean part, for just a split second there, I totally got Deftones, right? And again, it's that sort of haunting kind of melody, like a high sort of strung out melody with just really low end sort of jug 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 sort of things underneath, and you just kind of get a little bit of Deftones. But then it sort of, throughout that line, it morphed into something that kind of evoked a little bit more Carnival to me. Which is always a good thing. Now, having said that, I don't typically like bringing up comparisons of bands because it sort of diminishes, unless somebody is actively like aping the sound of another band. There's no real call for it. But sometimes just to sort of get a point across of what I'm listening to, what I'm hearing, it's easier just to throw out a band name. And it's not to say these guys sound like those bands. It's just that, you just suddenly get a ping of recognition and you're like, oh man, that's some Deftones kind of thing, but yeah, really cool. And I love that while all that chugging's going on through there, you've got more complex high-end noise guitar parts going on as well. See, there's a lot of sort of stuff going on up top. Oh. I'm trying to count bits and I keep getting lost, which is not unusual. I'm terrible at counting rhythms in the first place, but there's like things going on there that aren't immediately obvious. Like through that part there, I'm certain I was counting like 6/8, but it doesn't feel swung like a 3/4 or 6/8 does. Like 6/8 can sometimes not sound like that, but it sounds straight. It almost sounds like a 4 on the floor, like 4/4 beat. It just goes on too long, you know? 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I think it's because they're sort of yeah, because the guitars aren't sitting on the natural accents, you know, divided into threes. It's sort of kind of just the rhythm of the drums loops on that, but it's kind of everything else is almost. I hesitate to use the word polyrhythmic, but it's something going on there. Oh, that was it. That was definitely a tone. Oh, wow. It's cool. They got like I don't know if it's a wah effect, an auto wah, or just it doesn't sound like a phaser. Just in the right ear, it's kind of really disorienting in a cool way. But that's the beauty of having two guitar players in a band like this is you can have, you know, the guitars panned left and right. And so you get these kind of cool compositional things accidentally, like where if one guitar player is just playing like a riff going into a verse or something like that, it makes everything lopsided because just da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da over here, and then boom, the whole band comes in, it becomes stereo again, you know, and it sort of just puts you off uneasy, sort of unbalanced for a second. And also when you've got two separate conflicting guitar rhythms going, it tends to bounce back and forward. So you hear like a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it's really nice. As a band with a single guitar player myself, typically what I've got in the left and right tends to just be a double track of the same thing. And so you kind of lose that edge unless you deliberately do it, you know. But having two guitar players, it sort of always gives a little bit more dimensionality to the mix, especially when you've got such complex rhythms and stuff going on like this. Yeah, I think it's a phaser or a flanger. God damn it, now I want to know. Maybe it's a wah, because it's two in time. Yeah, no, I think it's a wah. I have no idea what he's playing, but yeah, I think it's a wah because it's timed too well. Plus, it's a mid-frequency sweep, which unless it's like an auto wah that's set to a specific time, yeah. But again, it's cool because again it unbalances the mix because it's not being, you know, replicated on the left side as well. Could also be, is it a whammy pedal as well? Wow, I'd really like to know because you can hear it changing pitch, but it doesn't sound like he's changing the notes on the guitar. It sounds like it's just wow. it's interesting listening to the vocal layering through there. And I'm noticing also that sort of feels a little bit like a chorus. And it drops back to a straight 4/4, which is like way easier to sort of bop to, you know? And it's, you know, that's clearly, I feel like that's a choice. It's like, as in, you know, when you've got so much chaos, occasionally you got to rein it in and give people something tangible to cling to for the parts of the song that you want them to connect with. And that's the big soaring vocals of the chorus and things like that. But what I wanted you to pay particular attention to here is the vocal layering. It's been double tracked a few times, different voice styles as well. Like there's some heavy vocals going on underneath the na 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 sort of parts. So you can hear it right there. Slept away under there. Yo! So it's that sort of thing's happening on both sides as a double track. Sometimes what you'll do if you do a double track, you'll have the main vocal. When you hear artists talking about double tracking, a lot of times this is just a device used to thicken up the vocal for like a strong part, like a chorus or something like that. And the way you'll do it is you'll typically record the main vocal and then you record like maybe 2 or 3 other tracks that are exactly the same duration and pitch and everything like that. And you'll mix them all in the middle and you'll pull the other ones down just enough so they're only just there to bolster and support the main vocal. You're still hearing 80% of it is the main vocal, but there's just a thickening of just other voices. Now you can play around with panning them a little wider to make it bigger in the center of the mix and things like that as well. But then other times what you'll do is you'll have like counter sort of vocals that are still technically double tracks. But if you're doing a completely different style of voice, then you kind of want them, you know, to spread out through the mix. And so it seems like what they've done here is they've panned them probably, I don't know, like maybe 30 left and right, maybe. So they're still relatively central, but you've got your main vocal, which is the sung part, like the clean vocal. And then you got this row sort of vocals either side matching it. And they're a little bit more relaxed as well in their timing. So it's not like you're sort of taking the main vocal like nah, and then putting a rah under it so that it sounds like the main vocal is distorted. You're clearly deliberately trying to separate them so you have this kind of unhinged kind of almost like a choral effect, but where the chorus is like aggressive voices. It's really cool. Actually, yeah, no, they're panned further. It's probably like 50 each way. Strike! Much lower for that note too. That's really cool. Oh, wow. Listen to that rattle. I love that. So yeah, that's what I was talking about throughout there with the detuned sort of nature of it. You can hear how loose that bass, the bass strings are. They're just rattly as hell. And there's a low end sort of distortion on there, like a it's not a fuzz, it's definitely like a distortion pedal. But he's getting that sound through percussion as well. He's hammering the bass to let the strings rattle and things like that. That's really cool and original. I like it. As far as outros go, I haven't heard anyone do that one before. First of all, I just want to say the video clip is actually really badass. Considering, you know, the age of it and things like that, they really put the kitchen sink into that one. Making any music video is tricky, but when you're making one for nearly a 6-minute song, it can be real easy to run out of ideas. And so they kept things fresh with, you know, using smoke machines and different camera angles and all that sort of stuff. Plus, obviously, the narrative sort of stuff throughout, which I'm going to have to watch again to sort of try and pick up what was getting put down there. But it didn't matter because you kind of get a tone of what they were going for visually as well. And that's kind of 90% of what it is. Because if you really engage with it, then it requires further viewing to sort of get the point of what it was about. You know, so if you enjoyed a cursory look at it, you can deep dive and you can sort of pick out a lot of cool things. Musically, I mean, it's kind of a little bit like more scattered musically than what I typically like. However, the execution of it is really good. Like I listen to bands like Meshuggah and I go, that's amazing. But I can't listen to that every day driving to work. Otherwise, it's too chaotic for me. I'm a real basic bitch, let's be honest. But, you know, the execution was brilliant. I like the overall sound of the band. I like the way that they work together rhythmically and stuff as well. That's really cool. I'm going to have to sort of check out some of their more recent stuff to see how they've sort of evolved over time too, because that's kind of the point of checking out something that's a little bit older. The other thing I wanted to point out is that it's bold having, you know, first of all, a left-handed bass player is tricky because, first of all, basses are kind of hard to get a decent bass in the first place because there's not as many as there are guitars. And then to have to be a guy who has to go in and say, do you have this in left? I feel you, man. I feel it's definitely a challenge for you. What is that, a Warwick? It's actually a really nice bass too. But also see here, I'm looking at it here. This makes sense, right? When you've got a left-handed guitar player in the band, the best scenario is what you're looking at right here, where they're on the right sides of the stage, where I noticed for a lot of the music video, they're like this, which is a terrible idea. The main reason is, as you can see, there's so much danger, especially when you're bouncing around like these guys do, of like clashing headstocks, which is something you never want to do. But yeah, it just, you know, it's one of those things that when you're in a band, oftentimes you get used to being on a certain side of the stage if you're a musician. And so like we always had a thing where we'd always go to shows and you'd set up automatically with, like, you know, I'd be on the left, Pablo would be on the right playing bass. It just feels right. Even when we go into the rehearsal studio, it always automatically fell into that sort of pattern. But yeah, I was watching this going, any second now, those two guitars are going to meet in an unpleasant way. Yeah, but to be honest, like, again, I really dug this. I think the vocalist has a really cool, versatile voice, especially for the era. Like, you know, so many strides have been taken in recent years with aggressive vocals, as far as understanding how to do them safely and cleanly. You know, there's so much competition out there now with just absolutely stellar aggressive tones as well, you know, and you got super versatile vocalists like people like Will Ramos and, you know, and then you got people like Alex Terrible from Slaughter to Prevail, who are just doing sounds that are like, I mean, surely people have done them before, but they're the ones who are kind of like brought them into the modern era as like, these are the guys you need to listen to if you really want your mind blown, right? A lot of people talk about Dickie Allen as well, but it's one of those things where it's real easy to do wrong. And oftentimes when somebody's doing it wrong, you can really hear it because you can hear the strain, you can almost hear the damage being done. You know, it's like a cheese grater. Whereas I feel like this vocalist he got it early on. He sort of understood how to do it. I don't know. Maybe he's had problems vocally. I don't know. But to me, it sounds like a clean, guttural sort of voice, but also versatile as well. Like, it's not just the raw sort of things. There's also a lot of that higher sort of what, you know, a lot of singers, the register they would use to sort of do more of that goblin-y kind of sound. It's not leaning into that sort of character so much here, but that sort of higher stuff. was really cool. And I noticed a few sort of lower growls in there as well. But yeah, definitely an interesting voice. And I know from listening to this singer, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with his name, in his other band, which is a little bit more proggy, you know, his ability to sing cleans is phenomenal as well. So yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, excellent drumming. Obviously, rhythmically, you've got so much going on. You can't sort of get to that point if you've got an average drummer. So that's impressive. And, you know, the two guitarists, bass player and guitar player, really sort of know how to work those rhythms to make them not sound, you know, like, again, with sort of like when you're breaking things into rhythms divisible by 3, oftentimes it's easy to get a ploddiness to them, which wasn't evident here at all. And, you know, to be able to switch seamlessly between different things. And also kudos to vocalists everywhere in these sort of bands as well, because unless you're a musician, sometimes the concepts of some of these rhythms can be overwhelmingly complicated to, you know, like I know from writing songs, I've got a couple of songs that have really complex meters. And when you start with the drum rhythm, because that's usually what I do, I program the drums and then I'll try to come up with it. Like even just writing a riff in 5/4 feels so unnatural until you figure it out and then you've played it a few times and then it's the easiest thing in the world because you know what it sounds like. But trying to write melodies, particularly over unusual rhythmic cadences, is something that it's really challenging, even for like musicians, you know. Whereas vocalists, a lot of times, and I don't know what the situation is with this guy, but a lot of times they don't have that sort of grounded education and experience with really complex rhythms, or, you know, unless they come from like a jazz background, or if they just grew up listening to bands like Meshuggah and Tool and things like that, you may not necessarily get it straight away. But there's none of that going on here. This is really sort of impressively sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Experienced musicians in this particular genre. So yeah, really cool. At the end of the day, that was a lot better I was about to say it was a lot better than I was expecting, but I didn't know what to expect. And I'm pleasantly surprised by how cool this was. So yeah, awesome, man. Definitely check out Symbiosist on YouTube, and also hit them up on their socials. I'm sure they've got them. And yeah, enjoy more of this. So that's all I got to say. I feel like I brightened your day at all. Feel free to support the channel just by buying me a coffee. I'll leave a link in the description. Also, like, share, follow, subscribe. Hype these guys up, man. If you're watching this and you're interested in bands of a similar ilk, you know, a lot of these sort of polyrhythmic or more sort of aggressive sort of bands, then, you know, these guys could really use a shout out from the rooftops, I think. So thanks again, guys. Stay primal. I'll catch you in the next one.